everybody, welcome back to Kiki's Closet. I am so excited for this week's episode. Being an actor of color in New York means you're probably called in for the same projects for the same people every week. But that isn't such a bad thing when the people you're surrounded with are so incredibly talented and so incredibly kind. And I'm so grateful to have 5 Latino actors here with us today. So let's go because we've got some diversity to celebrate, honey. Wait, that wasn't so good. Hold on, we'll do it again. That's it.
Come on and come and play in Kiki's Closet today.
These boys lit up my life in and outside of Pearl 519. Please help me welcome
Edgar Cavazos,
Diego Alejandro Gonzalez,
Danny Burgos,
Xavier Reyes,
and Diego Guevara.
How is everybody doing? How is quarantine treating all of you?
Good. At first it was like really stifling and I did not know what to do with myself. So I came to Miami because my parents have a backyard. I can sit out here. I can actually breathe.
Yeah. I am good. I am in Jersey. We have a lot of space, but it's hard because my husband have a real job. So he's always working. I am just like around him like, hey, I want attention, please, I'm here.
I think I've been doing well. There's days where I'm doing great and life is clouds. And then there's days when it's like, what is life? Questioning. So I came to Puerto Rico and to be with my family and it's been great. And I've been doing me.
Likewise, I also left the city. I wanted to get out of a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment. And I went to Rhode Island and the air was, so clean and fresh over there. And it was really nice to be able to go into the backyard and just be me, just live.
Hey, I'm doing okay. I'm actually in South Texas, so I didn't go back to New York after being sent home from tour. So it's called the Rio Grande Valley, if you're familiar with it. We call it the borderlands, Aquí está el puente. We have the bridge like 5 minutes from my house. There's days where it's really great, and then others it's like, where am I? What am I doing? How do I help myself in this moment?
So my favorite question to ask fellow actors of color, when was the first time you saw yourself represented on stage?
So mine, I'm sure, is going to be echoed with all of us. The first time I ever saw myself represented on stage was in 2009 when I watched the Tony Awards and I saw In the Heights. And it's the first time that I saw Latinos being portrayed as Latinos who are just human beings as opposed to caricatures of Latinos, And it was like kind of mind-blowing because I didn't know anything about theater. I didn't go into musical theater until I was a sophomore in college. I went from nursing to musical theater.
Oh.
I went back and I listened to the club and I was like, oh snap, they're dancing to like real salsa. It's not like that watered down mambo music that they have in West Side.
Oh. So I grew up going to musical theater. My mom worked as an usher at the local touring house, so I was very lucky to see a lot of theater. And I always knew I wanted to do it, but when I saw In the Heights on the Tony Awards, I was like, oh, I could actually be a lead character in this show? And I downloaded the album on my iPod Classic that night, and I knew I was gonna do it at some point, and I've been very lucky to do it several times. And I memorized it. That was all I listened to after the Tony Awards.
I moved to New York City 7 years ago, so I'm from Mexico. So I started seeing regional productions there, local productions. And in my head, I was like, we can do everything because the first musical that I saw was Cats with Mexican people. So I was like, we can do whatever we want. So I went to school for media and communication, never for theater. So I fell in love with theater when I moved, I guess, to New York City. The first time that I saw someone was Luis Salgado, like everyone else, and Rocky. So then I was like, oh, damn, we can do these kind of things, even in the ensemble. But I was like, I'm so happy to see someone like me.
Oh, Rent. When I saw Angel in Rent, I was like, okay, I see myself and I will play this role. And then I did.
What was that like? Because that's such an iconic role in musical theater, a Tony Award winning role. How was it like getting to step into those shoes? Into those heels, sorry.
And those heels, it was epic. I mean, the costume in itself is epic. The storyline is epic. It appeals to people that are part of my community. So getting to do those songs and a story with an arc, it's such a beautiful arc and a character that audiences relate to a lot and end up loving in the end. It was epic in every possible way.
I mean, this was kind of cheating, but taking the question in the direction of like, when did you start seeing yourself on stage was actually for the film stage version of Cinderella with Brandy, because it was like so colorblind, like the prince and the fairy godmother and everybody else were like POC.
I'm adopted, so my parents are white. So when I saw the prince who had a black mom and a white dad, this was like 1997. I was like 5, and I didn't really it didn't click to me that like there was that couldn't happen, because I was like, oh, I don't look like my parents. So I really do appreciate that Brandy Cinderella, and Whitney's so great in it too.
I'm going to say In the Heights as well. For me, I mean, how many shows do we have to choose from, when it comes to seeing ourselves? So we got like 3. But for me, I was a freshman in high school when that came out, when In the Heights was happening. And I didn't really know, I didn't know much about musical theater at that time. So I had a mentor in high school that actually gave me tickets to the touring production. And I was like, oh, In the Heights, what is this? Had no idea. I went with my mom, sat in that theater, and at first, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was a little confused. I was saying, is this theater? I was so confused because I had never seen something that was putting my people up on stage and celebrating their music, their love, the way that they, the way that they like build their families, and that idea, those ideas were just so completely out of the scope of theater for me that I sat there and I was confused at first. And then I said, this is the most epic, is this what other people feel when you connect with something on stage? It was an absolutely magical experience.
So we all know each other from acting and auditioning. I want to know any specific moments that you felt discrimination either in the audition room or in rehearsals because of your skin color.
I have had so much privilege because of my light skin tone. I don't experience discrimination with my skin tone. I only experience it with my accent, if it pops in, with my name, if they see it on my resume, or when I slate. I am one that is never going to Anglo-Saxon Diego Alejandro Gonzalez. Never, absolutely never, right? The first one for me, and the one that I think I really spoke back to, was when I was a freshman in college, and I went to school in the Bible Belt of Texas. It's called Abilene Christian University, and they have a great musical theater program. The stuff I was auditioning for was just like very little representation, and often it was like the tropes if it was people of color, right? The stereotypes that Danny was talking about earlier. So I was auditioning for the Subway Ghost and Ghost the Musical. The panel, right, was like, would you try that with like a Mexican accent or like a Latin accent, or a Spanish accent, right? And I was like, no, I don't want to do that, because you already have an antagonist in the show that is already of color and already has an accent. Why do you need another archetype? And that really struck a chord with me, with my ability to say I will not do that kind of material for you, but also with the people across the table from me.
I got to do Ghost as well. I was Willie Lopez, and it's I think we probably all have encountered this at some point, because you all are such lovely and positive and bright people. Often the times the things I get called in for are the gangster, the drug dealer, and I'm like, can I do that stuff? Yeah, I guess I can, but do I want to? No, that's not me at all.
I'm very similar in that I've never actually felt discriminated against because I have a lighter skin tone. I don't have an accent. I am what people constantly point out to me as ethnically ambiguous. So I've gone through my life in theater kind of just filling in holes, really. Yes, I've played every single Latino that you can ever think of. I've played Bernardo, I've played Gomez, I've played Usnavi, I've played all the staples. I've been called in for Che more times than I care to, because I am not a tenor and I can't sing. Stop calling me in for Che. But it's I get called in for all those Latino roles, but I've also played Tata in Ragtime. and I'm currently in the band's visit. I have a lot of privilege when it comes to that, and that's been my whole like stance right now during this whole Black Lives Matter thing. Privilege is not a bad word, as long as you acknowledge it and then use it to the benefit of other people. Privilege is not a bad word if I can say, yes, I do have a lot of privilege. And because of that, if I get called in for a role that I don't necessarily think I'm right for, it's kind of my duty to turn it down, because I have the privilege of knowing that there's another show that's going to come along for me. Whereas I have a bunch of Black and brown friends whose skin tone literally stops them from being in shows, you know? So I do have privilege when it comes to that, and I have to use that in order to help other people. Now, Latinos are notoriously known as like the thugs and the gangsters and the drug dealers and the this and that. And I got called in for an episode of Narcos, and they were like, well, Danny, you're not really using the right accent. And I'm like, no, because I'm Cuban Puerto Rican and you want me to speak like a Mexican person, but you don't want to say that because then you come off some type of way.
First of all, when I was little, I heard Meryl Streep in an interview say that if you're an actor, you can be anything from a bacteria to a worm to a tree to a human being. And I took that to heart. So growing up, I've always believed that as a Latino, with training, I could do anything I wanted to, right? So I always find myself submitting for a lot of roles that are typically not seen in the hands of a Latino, a Puerto Rican, right? I get emails with question marks of, we don't think you're right for the role, which I love, because then I get to explain to casting the reasons why I think I am right for the role, which match the breakdown. Stakes get usually pretty high for me because I feel like we as a whole have to put in a little bit more work when we get the privilege of getting called in for these roles that are typically not for us.
You know, there was that recent breakdown of different ethnicities that are represented on Broadway, and I think Latinos were like 2.9. So often we get down on ourselves like, oh, like, why am I not on Broadway yet? You know, why haven't I gotten this yet? And then that came out and I was like, oh, because there's really like the opportunities for me to succeed on that level are slim to none. And even looking at shows that are long running, like even like Wicked or even Kinky Boots, where there's really one track in the ensemble that we could do for no apparent reason, just because that's how it was done originally and they don't want to stray from that. That's frustrating as an actor of color.
First of all, it's really hard navigating this biz as a Latino man, because the business doesn't know where to place you, right? So it is our duty to really respectfully reject roles that are inappropriate for us, which is hard, easy to say, hard to do, but it's confusing because, for example, I've booked Jelly/Jam, have to decline it. I've been called for Motown. I've been in final callbacks for Mormon. I've been in for shows that aren't appropriate for me, roles that, stories that aren't mine to tell. So I've been offered Seaweed, dude. So and it's weird wanting the money or the points or the gig, but then really thinking and deciding, okay, this is not right. It's just hard.
Danny, you did the national tour of On Your Feet.
I was the first Cuban man to play Emilio Estefan.
Come on.
What was yes? What was that like? Tell us about your experience doing that show.
It was an incredible experience. Actually, the first time I ever saw On Your Feet, Xavier had an extra ticket, and he was like, "Oh yeah, my friend Hector is playing Emilio Estefan in On Your Feet. Do you want to come see it?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. Like, I don't know what it is," and I was able to watch Andrea Burns blow my mind singing Mi Tierra. Andrea Burns, I stan you. Thank you so much for everything you do. Pero, it was incredible. In the Heights was the first time I saw myself reflected on stage. On Your Feet was literally my story. You know, I am from Miami. I'm literally sitting in my backyard in Miami. Like, I am from Miami. That is my story. That's my pueblo. That's my everything, you know? Glorita, ¿cómo está? Like, it's the same thing. And it was incredible because putting on this story was not work at all. The only thing that I had to put on was the fact that I was straight and I had an accent. Pero, like, everything else was just like, that's how people talk here. That's how we do it. You know, this is what an American looks like. I've had that conversation with people over and over and over and over again, you know? It was an incredible experience, especially getting to be Cuban, portraying a Cuban. I wish that for everyone. I want Mexicans to portray Mexicans. I want Argentinians to portray Argentinians. If even one time, it's an experience unlike any other. You don't have to act. You're just existing.
Diego Gonzalez, you're playing Jesus on the national tour of Escape to Margaritaville, another Latino role. What was your experience like doing that?
You know, it is definitely a trope. Like, I'm not gonna lie to anybody, it's a trope, and it's very hard. It's something that, you know, 3 weeks into being on the road, you get effing tired. And we were on the road from like September through March. It is a show that is doing like what it's supposed to. It makes everybody really comfortable. It makes white people really comfortable, right? And it has the diversity and the people of color that it does sort of show as part of the Margaritaville universe. I think the good in that is letting a lot of comfortable white people see us in their universe, but also it does so in a very comfortable way. I worked so hard. Every part of my training, there was always something about assimilating, right? Like kind of going back and forth between some of what you guys said. It was like accent reduction, like standard American accent, like the look, you know, and all of that stuff, you know. And then all of a sudden, like I will call it like my first major gig out of school is like me going back into having to play a trope, which means employing the accent, you know, and sort of like my very Mexican mannerisms and, you know, esa manera que tienes de actuar y de existir. Now looking back, it's like, whoa, like that's what the system wants me to do in order to be able to book.
It is really hard. I also spent 2 years during my college training in speech therapy. So after we were all done and my classmates with classes, I had to go to the speech therapy department to work on reducing my accent. So it's really hard because then right out of college, after you undid everything and you adapted to what would be acceptable here in North America, then you were asked to undo that and be who you really were. It was all so confusing. So I had to always, as part of my prep for every audition, is having to do the work of, am I undoing here, or am I putting on a little filter, a little mask? What am I presenting?
Like Javier said, it's like a mind game, and you're sort of having to like deconstruct and reconstruct your identity. But I'm like very, very excited for what's happening, and I am here. If for whoever's watching this out in like the internet world, like I'm like here to hold so much space, and I think everybody here is too, but I'm also here to like fight for the people that experience like a million times more racism and color profiling than I do, because if this is how incredibly insane and tough it can be for somebody who is light-skinned but still has like the filtered versions of like the systemic racism in theater, like I can't imagine. And I have so much energy right now to like just whenever anybody out there is tired, like pass that on and like give me that baton and I will like run for you, because you know, I think that's just something that we can all let people know out there in our theater family.
We've all done many productions of In the Heights and Evita and West Side Story and On Your Feet, but I want to know what roles are out there that what other stories do you want to tell?
I want definitely more stories that I think aren't out there about Latino men being soft and educated. Boom.
I want to see, like I saw in the Heights, Latin men portrayed in all varieties. You know, a huge part of Latin culture is machismo, and we all experience that. And I, as a gay man, walk into these rooms with a stereotype of, oh, you're Latin. That means that you're gonna be tall, sexy, sweep me off my feet, and I'm gonna get pregnant just by listening to you talk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, no, because I'm a gay Latino. So like, you know, I'm gonna give you my version. I'm gonna give you what I do.
Well, I wanna play Elphaba. No, I'm kidding. I wanna be in Wicked. Like, I wanna be Buck, who doesn't love Wicked. And Savi, he was saying something really, really important about like having more stories. And I want the industry to know that there's a lot of Latinos out there. Like, different shapes, different colors. Because when I auditioned for my first In the Heights, the casting director told me, "You don't look Latino," and I was like, "I have an accent. I am Latino. Like, what are you talking about?" And he was like, "Yeah, but you don't look like someone to be in the show." And I was like, "But why not? There's a lot of Latinos. You don't know."
It's because a lot of these regional productions are often in very white areas for white audiences, and they need to present the story of what the white people view Latinos or people of color as. They don't want to see the variance of rainbow of people that are out there. They want the stereotype because that's exactly what they know, and they don't want to distract them from what they know already.
My last project is I'm extremely excited about because it's me. So I got to play, it's for Netflix, and it will be coming out in November, December. I'm not really sure when yet, but the name of the show is Dash and Lily, and I got to play a gay Latino without an accent. And I said, what? This is possible? So I'm incredibly excited about that. So yeah, I'm gonna go off and say the same thing. I think my dream role is roles that are to be written.
More POC, queer, non-binary, trans roles all the way.
I just want to thank you for opening this space and letting us speak freely and truly and authentically ourselves. It feels really good because sometimes I feel that I have to be the voice of all Latinos, specifically when I'm in a room where it's all white people and I'm trying to explain certain topics. It feels like I am the voice of reason when that's not necessarily true. And to have a room full of us, it feels incredible.
So I was so excited about this episode because we've all auditioned together for the same roles, for the same tracks, for the same shows, for the same productions. This has been great because I do, like, I have so much admiration for you guys in the audition room because your talent is like through the fucking roof. The amount of talent in this Zoom call is like unfucking real right now. Can they write a show about sick Latino men and like put that on Broadway? It'll run forever.
Please.
I find when there are auditions for shows like Evita and we're all called in for it, I never feel hate or like competition. No. Especially with you guys, there's like a common understanding of like, okay, you're gonna get this, you get this production of Evita, I'll get the next one. Like,
it's also,
just kind of works out.
It's also a celebration of us. So whoever gets it is a win for all of us, Anyone
else want to give any advice for fellow Latino actors that are, maybe in college right now or about to go to college or about to maybe they just graduated?
I want to say something to them because my dream was to go to school for theater, but they told me that since I had an accent, I would never work. And I never pay attention to them. I've been working with an accent since I got in the United States. So don't stop. Follow your heart, and that's the main thing to do, because if you love theater, there's nothing else you can do.
Put in the work. No, like
Put
Eddie
in the
said,
work.
like Eddie said, keep showing up for real.
Yeah.
Not this. Literally potential. Tap into your full range and potential, period.
Thank you guys so much for joining me here in my closet. I really appreciate the conversation we had today, and I can't wait to see you all real soon once this COVID quarantine apocalypse ends. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, TJ. Adore
Adios.
you.
Adios.
Come on and come and play in Kiki's closet today.